Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. I forgot who is reading today.
I am Prabhu Vidya.
Okay, go ahead, Mataji, when you're ready.
Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Taturjaya Muriraye Nashtapareshu Abhareshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 1, Questions by Vidura. Text 16. Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Text 17. By his piety, Vidura achieved the advantages of the pious Kauravas. After leaving Hastinapura, he took shelter of many places of pilgrimages, which are the Lord's lotus feet. With a desire to gain a high order of pious life, he traveled to the holy places where thousands of transcendental forms of the Lord are situated. Text 18. He began to travel alone, thinking only of Krishna, through various holy places like Ayodhya, Dwarka, and Mathura. He traveled to where the grove, hill, orchard, river, and lake are all pure and sinless, and where the forms of the unlimited decorate the temples. Thus he performed the pilgrim's progress. Text 19. While traversing the earth, he simply performed duties to please the Supreme Lord Hari. His occupation was pure and independent. He was constantly sanctified by taking his bath in holy places. Although he was in the dress of a mendicant and had no hair dressing, nor a bed to which to lie, thus he was always unseen by his various relatives. Text 20. Thus, when he was in the land of Bharatavarsha, traveling to all the places of pilgrimage, he visited Prabhashakshetra. At that time, Maharaja Yudhishthir was the emperor and held the world under one military strength and one flag. Text 21. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhasa, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west, where the river Saraswati flows. Text 22. On the bank of the river Saraswati, there were 11 places of pilgrimage, namely Trita, Usana, Manu, Pritu, Agni, Asita, Vayu, Sudasa, Goha, and Shraddha Deva. Vidura visited all of them and duly performed rituals. Text 23. There were also many other temples of various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, established by great sages and demigods. These temples were marked with the chief emblems of the Lord, and they reminded one always of the original personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Text 24. Thereafter, he passed through very wealthy provinces like Surat, Sauvira, and Matsya, and through western India, known as Kuru Jangala. At last, he reached the bank of the Yamuna, where he happened to meet Uddhava, the great devotee of Lord Krishna. Text 25. Then, due to his great love and feeling, Vidura embraced him, Uddhava, who was a constant companion of Lord Krishna and formerly a great student of Brahaspati. Vidura then asked him for news of the family of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Text 26. Please tell me whether the original personalities of Godhead who incarnated themselves at the request of Brahma, who is born out of the lotus flower from the Lord, and who have increased the prosperity of the world by elevating everyone, are doing well in the house of Surasena. Text 27. Please tell me whether the best friend of the Kurus, our brother-in-law Vasudeva, is doing well. He is very munificent. He is like a father of to his sisters, and he is always pleasing to his wives. Text 28. O Uddhava, please tell me, how is Pradyumna, the commander-in-chief of the Yadus, who was Cupid in a former life? Rukmini bore him as a son from Lord Krishna by the grace of Brahmanas whom she pleased. Text 29. O my friend, tell me whether Ugrasena, the king of the Sattvatas, Vrishnis, Bhojas, and Dasarhas is now doing well. He went far away from his kingdom, leaving aside all hopes of his royal throne, but Lord Krishna again installed him. Text 30. O gentle one, does Samba fare well? He exactly resembles the son of the personality of Godhead. In a previous birth, he was born as Kartikeya in the womb of the wife of Lord Shiva, and now he has been born in the womb of Janbhavati, the most enriched wife of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Mati. Hare Krishna. Yeah, I don't know. Sri Krishna Prabhu, when you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Vidya Maharaj Mataji. Hare Krishna. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yogam Shikshashtamekam Purusha Puranam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sriradhari Kripamudittamaham Prapadye. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are seeing the first chapter of third canto. So in the previous canto conclusion, Sukadeva Goswami gives Bhagavatam's little bit of summary about what contents are there in the Bhagavatam. Like he says about the 10 topics that Bhagavatam consists of, beginning from Sharga, creation, until the Ashraya, the protection, the shelter. So all of these topics, wonderful topics, are there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now in the chapter 3, now Vidura's questions to Maitreya Rishi was specifically discussed here because that question was raised by in the last canto, last chapter, it was raised by Saunaka Rishi. So he was interested in these topics, the questions raised by Vidura, because Vidura was a great devotee, and definitely there must have been discussions on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So due to that reason, this chapter actually manifested. So today we are seeing from verse number 16 about this is the pastime that how Vidura left the Hastinapur when he was part of the Dhritarashtra's assembly, and he was a very, very experienced, well-knowledged minister who can actually give consultation to the king, Dhritarashtra. But he had to leave because of the will of the providence, and he is narrating that story, what happened. So now, so verse number 16 here, Swayam Danur Dhari Vidaya Mayam. So Swayam means he himself kept the bow down, Danur Dhwari, so kept the bow down, and then he started walking out of the palace because of a particular reason. What happened was Duryodhana spoke very, 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 very piercing words, the words which cannot be even heard by enemies. So he spoke that to the Vidura. And what kind of words Vidura was, it was in verse number 15. But now Vidura considered that um, it is the will of providence. It is the Krishna's energy that is, making him to speak these kind of words. So he was not worried. He just took this opportunity to leave that particular place so that he won't be part of this warfare. So that was the reason mentioned here. Like, so it says Karna Bhanair. So Karna means the ears. Bhanair means the arrows. So these sharp words were like arrows piercing into his ears, and he could not even, stand that. And then his heart was totally afflicted with those very sharp words. So, so here Prabhupada mentions that a pure devotee is not disturbed by the external energy of the Lord. So in this case, the external energy of the Lord is acting through Duryodhana. So he's not disturbed, but he took that opportunity to go for a pilgrimage, which is really, wonderful way. Instead of reacting to his words, he took this opportunity and then went for a pilgrimage. So the verse number 17. So now here it is mentioned that by leaving Hastinapur at that point, it became an advantage because of his previous pious activities that he did. It all just came at that moment. It became advantage for Vidura. And then what? How did it give advantage? It just Gajavaya Tirthapadaha Padani. So he went to the holy pilgrimage of the Supreme Lord's, temples and pilgrimages. So that is how it become an advantage for him. So and then this is also desired by Vidura. So Vidura was desiring because of Anva Kramat Punya Chikishayo Vyam. So Punya, like the piety, like he was desiring to achieve higher Punya. There are Punya in this material world. There is also Punya, Krita Punya, like this pious activities, which is purely spiritual. So he was desiring such kind of a piety that by traveling to all this transcendental places, and it is said here that Adhisthito Yani Sahasra Murti. So Sahasra Murti, he means the Lord is, in Bhagavad Gita also Lord is described as Sahasra Bahu. He has thousands of hands, he has thousands of faces. And here also is a Sahasra Murti. So all of his Archa Vigraha Murti in all of the temples is mentioned here as Sahasra Murti. So he was desiring to take darshan of all these wonderful temples. So here Vidura. So here Vidura was a very, very elevated personality, but still, so he is also desiring to even elevate his consciousness by visiting these holy places. So Prabhupada mentions that in the spiritual path, there is always a scope for improvement. So Vidura was such kind of a personality that he was is very elevated, pure devotee, but still he is desiring to go to these places of pilgrimage for even going in higher consciousness. So and then in the verse number 18, the descriptions of where all he traveled is mentioned here. Puresha Punya Upavana Adri. So Adri is the hills. Kunjeshu, like orchards. So he was traveling the hills and orchards and in the places like Ayodhya, Dwaraka, Mathura. So all of these holy places he was traveling, and wherever the river Sarashu is the lake, the rivers, lakes. Anantalingaya is like the unlimited forms of the Lord. Samalangruteshu, so he's so decorated. All of these forms of the Lord are nicely decorated. So he was visiting all those temples, and then he went alone, meaning so he went to the pilgrimage all by himself. He is traveling all these wonderful holy places. So Prabhupada also mentions the details about Archa Vigraha. Archa Vigraha is not an idol, just which was described by atheists. Archa Vigraha is authorized form of the Lord, which when worshipped with love and feelings, then you get perfection. You get all this emotions and exchange happens between you and the Lord. So that it is. He also describes about how the example of the post box is like Archa Vigraha is like authorized post box for transaction of love between you and Krishna. Like it is, so just like the post box, you put a letter, it goes to the destination perfectly. And similarly, when you pray to Archa Vigraha, which is all authorized forms of the Lord, then your reciprocation is accepted by the Lord. So that is also, Prabhupada gives the details here. And while he was traveling, and what all duties he performed, all those details are mentioned in the verse number 19 here. So he was not completely immersed in the thoughts of the Lord. So he was not even caring about his physical body, decorating or dressing nicely, all these things. So it is mentioned here that he was like a sadhu sada apluto adaha sayanaha avadutaha. So avaduta is like a one who just wanders, without any proper dress or hair, so he was wandering like a avaduta. And alakshita swair avaduta vesho. So because of his like dressing like avaduta, even people who know him, they could not identify him. So he was just moving around without seeing by relatives. This is another blessing, that he just wants to completely immerse without having to be identified by anyone. So that particular aspect is also mentioned here. And then what was his purpose? His purpose was Vratani Chere Haritoshanani. So Haritoshanani, just to please the Supreme Lord. That was his only purpose. And for that purpose, he took this Avaduta's, that form that nobody could identify him. He was just wandering around temple to temples, and he was performing just to please the Lord. He is going around. So here again, Prabhupada says that this is the only purpose of pilgrimage, to satisfy the Supreme Lord. All other things are secondary. You should not be worried about pleasing the society or relatives or anything else. The journey should be fully dedicated to pleasing the Supreme Lord. So then verse number 20. So again, the wonderful Kshetra, Prabhak Kshetra is mentioned here. So here it says that Itam Brajan Bharatam Eva Varsham. So Bharata Varsham is the place of the whole that time the whole earth was called as Bharata Varsha. So now in the Bharata Varsha he was in the Prabhash Kshetra. Kalena Yavan Gatavan Prabhasham. So by the course of time, he was just walking, and then he reached the Prabhashetra. So in the Prabhashetra, the rule, what was the rule that time was mentioned? Eka Chakram. So there's only one military rule, and then Ekata Patram. So Patram is like the flag. There's only one flag, there's only one military rule. And Ajitena Parthaha. So it was by the mercy of Krishna. Ajita is like another name of Krishna, who can never be conquered. And Parthaha is again here it is mentioned about Maharaj Yudhishthira Maharaj. So Yudhishthira Maharaj was ruling Hastinapur, and the entire Bharatvarsha was under his rule, and there was only one flag that, so like now again Prabhupada mentions about 5,000 years ago, when Vidura was traveling, the whole Bharatvarsha was ruled by Maharaj Yudhishthira, and there was only one military under his military strength. He was the emperor. I mean, there are many small kings, but still the emperor, he was the emperor who was, and all of the small kings were under him. So now he is comparing that, like there are so many hundreds and thousands of flag in the United Nations. There is no unity. Like there has to be a good personality. If you could rule the entire under his power, the entire the state works, then it works so wonderfully. That point Prabhupada is pointing out here. And then at the Prabhashetra, Vidura comes to know about the sad event that happened. So in the Prabhashetra only, all of the Yadu dynasty, they come and then they take part in having Varuni, and then there is some friction, and then there is a fight that happens, and most of them, they leave the body there in Prabhashetra. It was arrangement of Krishna again. But that sad news comes to the Vitura's knowledge that all his relatives, they died due to this violent passion. And then the example is given here. So it was on the bank of. So the example given here is the forest fire, how it happens. Vanam yata venuja vahni samshrayam. So vanam is like the forest. Venuja vahini is like Venuja vahini. It's like the fire due to the bamboos. So in the forest, nobody creates a fire. Like in the dense fire, there are only animals. There are no human beings. But how does the fire happen? Is when the wind blows, and these are very thick bamboos. They grow one after another, very close. They just rub each other, and then the sparkle comes, and then the dry leaves, they catch fire. So like that, this instant of violence, how it happened is example. This example is given here. It's just like a forest fire. It happened in this material world. So after that, he left Prabhashetra and he went towards river Saraswati, where the river Saraswati flows in that direction. So, and then verse number 22, what are the places of pilgrimage on the banks of river Saraswati? All of these places are mentioned here, like Trita, Ushana, Manu, Prutu, Agni, Ashita, Vayu, Sudasha. So all of these wonderful places Vidura visited and then performed his rituals there. And then the verse number 22, Anyani Cheha Dvijad Deva Devai. So here again, so Dvijad Deva is like the great sages. The sages are, the Dvija is a word used for Brahmanas, twice born, and Dvijad Deva is the word used here for great sages. And Deva is the demigods, Kritani. So these temples are established by the great sages and demigods. So there were many wonderful temples there. And these temples were also marked with many emblems. Kritani Nana Yathanani Vishnu. So there are many Vishnu forms were actually, different forms of Vishnu, like Varaha Murti, Vamana, like all of these wonderful forms, different Vishnu forms were chief emblem, the forms are all in this temple, Murti, Archa Vigraha Murti. And also there are many emblems here were marked in these temples. They all, the word used is Anusmaranti, Krishnam Anusmaranti, Yad Darshanat Krishnam Anusmaranti. So these emblems or these forms are all made for one purpose. Just by looking at them, one remembers Krishna. Just that remembrance of Krishna is evoked. So that was mentioned here. And then the verse number 24. So after he went through these places on the banks of river Saraswati, then he again went to these places called Surat, Savira, Matsya. And this is the western part of the India. That time it was known as Kuru Jangala. So then after that, he reached the bank of Yamuna. So now it is in the northern portion, where he meets a great devotee of Lord Krishna, Uddhava. So again, it mentioned Kalena Tava Yamunam Upetya. So as the course of time, he was traveling, and then he was close to bank of Yamuna. Now, Tatro Uddhavam Bhagavatam Dadarshaha. So Uddhava is mentioned here as a Bhagavatam. He's a great devotee of the Lord. He's a Bhagavata. So now they come face to face with Uddhava and Vidura. Now the discussions between them starts after this verse. So now, because of his great love and feeling, of Krishna, Vidura embraced Uddhava. So Sa Vasudeva Anucharam Prashantam. So he was, because he was always a constant companion of Krishna. Uddhava is always Vasudeva Anucharam, means always a constant companion. It is as good as embracing Krishna. He was feeling that love. So and also he is also a disciple of Brahaspati Tanayam Pratitam. He's a student of Brahaspati. Then Vidura was asking about the news of Lord Krishna. So Alingya Gadam Pranayena Badram Swanam Apruchat Bhagavat Prajanam. So Bhagavat Prajana means the one who is related to Krishna. So all the relatives of Krishna, families. So he was inquiring about all of them. Now the verse number 26 is again questioning specifically about a particular aspect of Krishna, that he came to this planet on the request of Brahmaji, and then he increased the prosperity of the world. And are everybody doing well in the house of Surasena? Like that he was questioning Uddhava. So here again the word Padma Anuvritya so is mentioned. By the Padma Anuvritya is the Padma lotus, one who is born from lotus. So that is Brahmaji. So Brahmaji, on the request of Brahmaji, Swanabhya Padma Anuvritya. So Brahmaji, on the request of Brahmaji, Krishna came, and is everyone doing well? Krita Kshanaha Kushalam Sura Gehe. So is everyone doing well in the house of Surasena? That was his question. And then verse number 28. So he is questioning particularly about Kachit Kurunam Paramaha Suhuruna. So he is all the friends and relatives of Kurus. And then Vasudeva, he is also asking about Vasudeva, who is father of Krishna. and he's mentioning a particular quality of Vasudeva, that he is very he is like a father to his sisters and very pleasing to his wives. So Vasudeva qualities are also mentioned here. Yovai Swarsh. So here Vasudeva, about Vasudeva, Prabhupada mentions a little bit detail, how Vasudeva is related to Vidura. So it was mentioned here, so Vidura's sister, so Vidura's sister is Rohini or Pauravi. So Vasudeva married her. So Vidura and Vasudeva, they are close relatives. So then verse number 28, again Uddhava is asking Uddhava about Pradyumna, who is a commander-in-chief of Yadus. And Pradyumna, in his previous life, he was Cupid. Himself, he was the, again, he was reborn as Pradyumna, son of, grandson of Krishna here. And then son of Krishna here, and then by the grace of Brahmanas, so here Pradyumna is particularly is being asked about him. He's asking about him, and then the verse number 29, he's also asking about about Ugrasena, Vrishnis, Bojas, Dasharas, all of these lineage, and so when one pastime of Ugrasena is mentioned, like when King Kamsa was ruling, Ugrasena was put into a prison, and then he was taken, far away. Then he got very dejected that time. So when Krishna killed Kamsa, then again Krishna didn't become the king. Like he brought Ugrasena and he made him the king. So that pastime was also mentioned here. And then finally, the verse number 30 for today, he was questioning about the well-being of Samba. The Samba, is it mentions here the Samba is exactly it resembles similar to Krishna here. And in the previous life, Samba was Kartikeya, who was born to Lord Shiva and Parvati. Now he was born in the womb of Jambavati, the wife of Lord Krishna. So one by one personality, again here Vidura was questioning, so that Uddhava is very close to Krishna, so he can describe all these personalities and their well-being and all that. So Hare Krishna, thank you very much. That concludes today's verse.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Prabhupada ki jai. It's our obeisance to all the devotees. Vancha kalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhu.